Last night was a new evolution of my nightmares. It started with a common theme. I was in the desert on a moonless night. Armed men led me, Alma and Juan into a box canyon. Our arms were bound together, and our captors pulled us deeper and deeper into the gorge. From the back, I couldn't see anyone's face. I tried to tug against my binds, but the pull was too strong, like I was caught in a tide. Even the canyon walls felt like two giant waves hanging over me. As my eyes drifted down, I realized their smoothness was an illusion. Little holes had been bored into the rock, and inside the holes, I saw faces. They were the cold, dead faces of everyone I've ever heard. The Asian migrant who drank his own piss, and the Indian whose guts were squeezed out of his mouth. Even my mother was there, her face twisted up in terror like the day she died. After I bring Alma and Juan back to detention at the station, I try calling every pro bono immigration lawyer I can find. Maybe someone can take their asylum case. Most are swamped, and the few that listen stop me at satanic gang ritual. They think I'm trying to entrap them in something, or embarrass them, or they don't want to waste the time on a hopeless cause. I get it. They can help someone with a real shot at staying here instead of chasing fairy tales. That leaves me with no choice, except my plan. It's a stupid crazy plan that might not even work and will definitely get me fired. But it's the only hope they have, and it's the only hope I'll have to ever sleep again. The first step is getting Father Casey on board. We meet in Ajo, a tiny town near the station where a lot of us BP live. I suggest the grill, but he wants to see the Immaculate Conception Church in the main square. It's definitely the prettiest part of town. The Spanish-style architecture has these crazy pure white walls that glow like hot coals in the Sonoran sunset. They're glowing again when I finally get off of work to meet him. Inside, it's empty and plain. A gold cross hangs above the modest altar, small icons hang on the walls, and a little lady sits in the pews alone. Father Casey chats with the priest when he sees me. After a quick goodbye, he meets me in the center aisle. "Have you been here before?" he asks. "No," I say. "Well, I have to show you the most amazing thing." He leads me back into the pews and points high up at the wall. The powerful light of the sunset glows through a stained glass window of the Virgin Mary. Like the church, she's plainly rendered with large shards of glass. One single featureless piece for her face, and two trapezoids for her arms in prayer. But Father Casey is right. The sunset streams through the shards, creating a shower of colored light. It is kind of amazing. I bet most people don't think to look up. The father says, "The world would be a better place if they did." "Probably," I tell him. "Thanks for meeting me here." "Thank you for calling me back. It's been so long," he says as we walk around the church and look at the icons. "Yeah, but I gotta tell you that I didn't call to catch up." "Oh, it's about an asylum case I have. I could use your help with something." "Of course," he says earnestly. "I once accompanied a lawyer to the center in Adelanto. You know the one? Unfortunately, this isn't a case for lawyers." He frowns, and I continue. "There's a complication, and that's why I need your help." "Tell me about the complication." "A few days ago, I picked up a woman and her 11-year-old son trying to cross the border. She says she's afraid to go home and wants asylum. The reason she's scared is the problem. It's because a gang, they want to sacrifice her son to Satan." "You're serious?" "Yes, and no lawyer or judge will ever believe it. Though, this might be a blessing in disguise. See, gang violence doesn't work for asylum anyway, but religion persecution does. If I can prove there was a real satanic attack on this boy, I can approve their application. That's where you come in. You want me to say this boy is possessed? I don't know. That's what his mom thinks. Because most people who claim to be possessed are suffering from genuine psychological problems. And I'm sure this boy has no lack of trauma from gangs, from the border, and whatever you people have put him through. I know. He doesn't need a priest. He needs a doctor. The force of Father Casey's words shake the quiet of the church. Look, I don't make the rules. I know this kid has been through hell, and not the literal one, but we don't protect people for that. And trust me, no one feels shittier about it than I do. I take a deep breath and give my final pitch. I'm no expert in the faith I was born into, but my understanding is that we think evil exists. A more fundamental evil. Call it demons or Satan, but it's an inhuman evil, and it's an evil that wants. So I'm not asking you to lie, Father. Just talk to this boy and tell me if an evil wants him. If not, so be it. I can see my words have affected him deeply, and he sits down and appears to think. As the last of Mary's colored light fades from the opposite wall, Father Casey turns to me with his response. You're a lot like your mother, you know. You charge headfirst into the darkness. What do you mean? It's a story for another time. He sighs heavily, then says, I will help you. That's great. But I should warn you, since, as you say, you're not an expert. If this is something real, if there is a demonic presence in this boy, it will not take kindly to our intervention. Be prepared for the consequences. Juan is sick again. In the morning, he vomits up his breakfast and runs a low fever. His skin is an unsettling yellow tint as well. I don't know how I'm going to get Father Casey to him, but I'm running out of time to figure it out. Rumors have spread through the holding area about Maria's death, and the other detainees have a new name for the boy. Maldito. When I come to check on them, Alma and Juan huddle in a pile of blankets near the toilet. The other families keep as much distance as they can from them. How are you holding up? I ask Alma. I don't think I can take this anymore. Alma tells me. When I got here, I already felt like no one wanted us. But at least there were others. Now we are unwanted by the unwanted. You won't be unwanted for long, I whisper. That priest I told you about, he's going to come. He's going to help you stay in the US. But this sends her into a deeper despair. You think I'm afraid of La Migra? Well, I thought. Look at my son. She points at Juan. Wrapped in blankets, he stares at the floor. A blue bruise covers his cheek, and his gaze is somewhere only he can see. I'm afraid for his soul. He doesn't eat, he doesn't drink. She drops her voice low. And I don't think he sleeps. That's why they're afraid of him, because of what happened last night. What happened? I'm not sure. Maybe it was a dream I had. Her voice trails off. She's dirty and exhausted, and I don't press further. But as I leave the cell, the other detainees watch me anxiously. I decide to investigate after lunch. As soon as the surveillance tech leaves, I sneak inside the camera control room. I dial in the surveillance footage for the family holding room last night. You can see everything clear as day because we leave the lights on all night. From the aerial view, I see all the detainees have wrapped themselves in thermal blankets like big metallic cocoons. No one stirs. It's when I fast forward that I see him. Juan's dark head bobs back and forth for hours. Then at around 3 a.m., he gets up and tiptoes around the other bodies. Somehow, he doesn't wake anyone up. Until he gets to the door. He bangs his head against it, and again. As he keeps banging, the cocoons shake awake, and terrified detainees emerge from them. But they don't come to help Juan. Instead, they all huddle against the far wall. Why would they do that? What are they afraid of? There's no audio on the tape, so I suspect they heard something that drove this blind fear into them. Alma emerges from the crowd and pulls him away from the door. He pushes back, but she doesn't let up. Eventually, she manages to guide him to the floor, wrap him in a blanket, and spoons him in a tight embrace. I fast forward another couple minutes, and the door suddenly swings open. It's Evan, the night surveillance guy. He pushes Alma away to get Juan. Charging at him, he's about to grab the boy when something happens that I can't explain. It looks like Juan slithers away, like his shiny mylar cocoon slides on the floor in a serpentine pattern. It's possible he's just crawling very quickly, but it looks so unreal. The terrified detainees start climbing up on the bench to get as far away as they can. Finally, Bill grabs Juan off the floor and pulls him out of his blanket. The boy wriggles furiously in his grasp but can't get free, so he starts to chomp at him. This takes Evan by surprise. He's thrown off balance, which allows Juan to sink his teeth deep into his bicep. Evan screams soundlessly. He tackles Juan and then smacks him across the face. Then, Evan retreats out of the room. Anger wells up inside of me, and I have to stop the tape. I want to break that motherfucker's jaw. So I linger around after the end of the shift, waiting for Evan to show up. Nearly everyone from my shift is gone when I finally ask intake if they've seen them. Her face goes dark. "Oh, you didn't hear?" she says. "He's in the hospital." "Shit, what happened?" "He got bit by a diamondback. They're not sure he's gonna make it." With no one on surveillance tonight, I have a shot to sneak in the priest. First, I go into the camera control room and pull the master power, then plug it right back in. Not only does it kill the recording, but it also looks like a power surge, which we get all the time out here. Since there's no one to reset the cameras, we're good for the night. Next, I dress Father Casey in my old uniform. The guard at reception doesn't look twice at him, and he waves us through. While Casey waits in the interview room, I fetch Alma and Juan. She has deep circles under her eyes, and Juan's are bloodshot, with red eyes, yellow skin, and a black marker band across his face. The boy has transformed into someone unrecognizable. The other families are relieved to see them leave. By the time I bring them to the room, Father Casey has changed back into a black shirt and his Roman collar. He gives Alma a deep embrace, and I see her smile for the first time since she's been back. He tries to hug Juan too, but the boy pulls away. With that, I start the video recorder, and so begins our second interview. I'm Father Patrick Casey, parish priest of All Saints in Los Angeles. I've been asked to evaluate the possibility of demonic oppression in 11-year-old Juan Flores, he says to the camera. I angle it down to the ground where Alma sits with Juan against the wall. Father Casey joins them on the floor. The interview continues in Spanish. "How are you feeling, Juan?" He looks up to his mother. She nods for him to answer. "Muy mal," Juan responds, just above a whisper. I turn the audio gain up all the way on the camera to catch his words. Static buzzes in my headphones. "Why bad?" Father Casey asks. "The food is rotten, and they beat me. They are very bad here." This is the most I've heard Juan say since I picked him up. He even turns toward the camera to show his bruise. "I'm so sorry. We're here to help." The priest continues. "No, you're not. He's one of them." Juan looks at me again. He's trying to help you too. He's a good man. Juan laughs. A deep, throaty laugh that belongs more to a full-grown man than an 11-year-old boy. It puts us on edge. What's so funny? The priest asks. You think he's a good man, pendejo? Juan snarls. Yes, I do. Did he tell you he killed someone? No. Juan turns back to the camera, menace in his bloodshot eyes. Tell him, senor. I stay silent. Tell him how you found a man in the desert. Tell him how you slashed his water jug. Tell him how he drank his own piss for 5 days. Tell him. The priest turns to me to ask, without judgment. Did you tell him this? No, I say. He turns back to Juan. How do you know this, mi hijo? Juan doesn't answer, so the priest directs the question at Alma. In her eyes, I see pain and confusion. Did you tell him this? I didn't know myself, she says. I see. Father Casey studies Juan, concerned. Sticking his hand down his collar, he takes out a cross hanging around his neck. Juan hisses and pushes against the wall. What's wrong? Father Casey asks him.
Show like the back.
Juan shouts at him. Stop, baby, stop. Alma begs him, but he swats her arm away. He is just speaking gibberish. Alma explains to Father Casey. It's a stupid game, nothing more. It's not gibberish, I'm afraid. He's speaking a dialect of Nahuatl, ancient Aztec, Casey explains. Terror grips Alma's eyes. What's he saying?
Ziluia.
Juan commands the priest. He is telling us to rejoice, because he is the night drinker. Dios mío, Alma swears, crosses herself and starts to pray. Her words aggravate Juan, and he pushes her with tremendous strength. Her body slams on the ground, and Alma starts to weep. Please, she begs Father Casey, get this out of my son. Then she continues her prayers. Juan screams.
Makamo tulatua. Makamo tulatua.
But Alma keeps going. He jumps on his mother and starts to wail on her with his fists. Father Casey pulls him off, and now Juan has a new target. He pushes the priest into the table in front of me. With a loud crunch, Father Casey hits it with such force that it flies at him and knocks the camera over. Señor, nos proteja! Alma yells, which sends Juan into a frenzy. I join the fray and grab him before he can strike his mother again.
Makamo tulatua.
He shouts and turns his fury on me. The next thing that happens is my baptism of fire. It's when everything changed. It's when I started to believe. Juan picks me up, all 165 pounds, and throws me through the air all the way across the room. I hit the opposite wall with a thud. The shock of the attack takes Alma's breath away, and she quits her prayers. And then, as if what happened was a nightmare, Juan's expression suddenly changes. He starts to cry, and Alma takes him in her arms. I know what my boss will say. That Juan knew this language from before. That he was faking his fear of the sacred. And that he heard the story of the man I killed from someone else. His mom or another guard. But there is no way to explain the strength he mustered to attack me. That, Father Casey says, is the irrefutable proof of Juan's possession. Now we pray that I got it on tape. My name is Father Patrick Casey. Dom insisted that he dictate this post to me because he is unable to write it himself. After browsing your discussion board, I understand his need to share his tale. Few who are demonized or possessed believe in the supernatural nature of their oppressor, and even fewer would seek help from the church. So, it is here that the spiritual must congregate and weave their confessions into stories, free of the judgment and ridicule of our materialist world. I have endeavored to transcribe Dom's words as exactly as possible. But you should know this. He is not well. His tortured and at times rambling recollections of the past 3 weeks required my frequent interjections, which I have italicized. Nothing that follows should be taken as my personal or the church's endorsement of the story's veracity. This is Dom's truth, and his alone. We are recording in Dom's studio apartment at night. All the windows, the glass screen door, and the mirror in the bathroom has been broken, and their shards intentionally smashed into smaller pieces, which now litter the floor like sharp gravel. The TV lays face down on the bed next to a mount of broken ceramic from the flower pots. Black gaffer tape covers the shiny metallic handles of the refrigerator and oven. The walls are bare. Framed photos, a broken mirror, and all the dining chairs have been thrown outside into the small backyard. It is very cold. Dom huddles in an empty corner of the room. I should start where I left off. Where did I leave off? I can check for you. Stop. What are you doing? It's just my phone, Dominic. Put it away. Right now. I said no screens. Yes, of course. I'm sorry. Perhaps that's a good place to start. When did you first notice the presence? When I watched the video we made of Juan. You got it on tape? No, the picture was shit. It was all static, the whole thing. The sound was fucked up too. You could barely hear our voices, and I had to turn the volume all the way up to hear what we were saying. Well, except for Juan. He was quiet like the rest of us at first. But when his voice got all deep and different, it was like he was speaking right into the mic. First time I heard it, it was so loud it shook the room. Made me jump. But when I turned off the TV, you know what I saw? I saw him, who you're calling the presence. He was standing behind me and stretched his arm out to touch me. And in his hand was another arm, chopped off from whatever body. I spun around, and he was gone. I was more disturbed than scared. Another hallucination, I thought. And this one I had seen before back at the station. But this time, it was different. When I faced the TV again, he was still there. The arm was closer now, and I could feel his fingers tickle my hair. I ran to the bed, and he still didn't go away. In the reflection of the TV, I could see him walking toward me. All I could do was throw the TV on the floor and trash the tape. Then I spent all night in the car. When the sun came up, and I was still in one piece, I thought maybe he'd leave me alone for a while. So, what happened? I was wrong. The next day, I tried to avoid Alma and Juan, but she requested me by name. In the back of her cell, I could see Juan wrapped in mylar. His eyes were crusted over, his lips were cracked, and his body was pale and bloated. He looked infected, like someone had ripped the little boy's cap off of him, and now we could see what was festering underneath. Somehow, Alma still had hope in her eyes when she asked me how it was going. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't tell her the truth and kill her hope because it was the only thing keeping her going. So, I lied. I told her soon they would be out of here. Soon I would figure it all out. She was so happy that she stretched her fingers through the chain link and pressed her face against it and smiled and said, Soon, there won't be anything between us. In that moment, that chain link was the only border that existed for me. She looked so beautiful. I needed to cross it. Can you blame me? I was tired of living the nightmare of the truth. I wanted the sweet dream of this lie. So I wrapped my fingers around hers and kissed her through the mesh. Dom's gaze drifts to the ground, and he's silent for a while in memory. I can see his eyelids getting heavy. His head bows down to sleep. Then suddenly, his chin jerks up and his eyes pop open. His shout startles me. "Are you alright, my son?" I'm fine. Just don't let me fall asleep, okay?" "Okay." What was I talking about? You kissed Alma. Oh yeah, right. That's when I was the most delusional, believe it or not. It was like she lit my brain on fire. You know, I actually thought I could figure out a plan B or some other scheme to get them out of there. I don't know how many days I was on that high, but I remember clearly what happened next. November 9th happened. What was November 9th? Don't you read the paper? The president banned asylum for anyone who entered the country illegally. That very same day, the chief ordered me and Steve to process Alma and Juan for deportation. We got to her cell, and I could tell she had been crying all night. Not because of the asylum ban. There was no way she could have known about that. It was because she was living in a cage. But seeing me gave her a burst of energy, and she ran up to greet us. "Somos liberados? Are we free?" All I could say is see. She hugged me. She even hugged Steve. And then she started shouting in Spanish, all excited like to Juan. He looked worse than the other day. But the ugliest person in the room was Steve. I remember he had this shit-eating grin on his face, like he was proud of us. While Alma helped Juan up, he gave me this pat on the back. "Good thinking," he said. Good thinking. It made my skin crawl. Juan, though, could see it through our bullshit. He wouldn't budge, and it made Alma crazy. "Vámonos!" she yelled at Juan until he finally got up. He looked straight at me and said in perfect English that I was a lying cocksucker. Those exact words. Lying cocksucker. Then he turned to his mom and called her a naive bitch. That's when Steve took out the cuffs and started barking threats at him. But Juan just stared at him. He looked Steve right in the eyes and said something like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna do me like your uncle did you in the upstairs bathroom?" I've never seen Steve go so ballistic. He grabbed Juan by the hair, pulled him up against the wall, and started to choke him. Alma and I tried to pull him off, but Steve's a built motherfucker. I started to yell, "You're gonna kill him, you're gonna kill him." And Steve finally let go. Juan had this coughing fit. At least, that was what I thought it was. But no, he was actually laughing. I tried to say sorry for Steve's behavior, and he just kept on laughing and laughing. "Don't worry about it," he said through his giggles. Then he looked at all of us, and I'll never forget what he said next. He said, "You're all gonna die anyway." How could he know that, father? He cannot. Steve hasn't been in for weeks. I'm sure Juan and Alma are dead by now too. That just leaves me. We don't know anything for sure. You must keep faith. Whatever possesses Juan knows all of your doubts. It attacks your faith, and you must not let it succeed. Who is attacking me? Don't say who. A demon isn't a man. It is an it, and I'm not sure what demon it is. Great. The language we heard Juan speak is ancient Aztec. That and Juan's national origin suggest a demon of the New World. You mentioned seeing something reflected in your TV. Did it return? Did you get a better look? The next time I saw him, it, was when we took Juan and Alma to the van. She still thought they were being released, so I couldn't bear to look at her. I hung back as Steve put her in the rear of the vehicle. Then it was Juan's turn to get in. He started to push back, so Steve needed my help. I went to open the door, and for a split second, I saw Juan's reflection in the tinted windows. Except, it wasn't Juan. It was the thing I saw before. Can you describe it? It looked old. So old that its head was more like a skull with shriveled yellow skin pulled over it, and its eyes were lidless perfect circles set in a band of black skin, exactly where Juan had drawn it on himself at the hospital. The nose was more like two slits, and he had a mouth with no lips, so you could see the bones of his teeth go all the way up into the skin. Oh yeah, and he had a crown. A crown? I think it was feathers or straw or something thin and sharp like that. Right underneath, I could see a 5-pointed star carved into his forehead. What does that mean? Nothing. You look worried. It's simply, there are hierarchies among these things. Are you sure it was a crown? No. I only saw it for a split second. And it saw me. It smiled even. After that, I don't think it ever left my side. What do you mean? We got in the car and started driving right along the border wall to the Nogales crossing. That's how we do Mexican deportations. We marched them straight across the border to local police. Like I said before, the rear windows of the van have a heavy tint, so Alma didn't know where we were going. Eventually she asked, and this was my mess, so I had to answer. I turned around to tell her that we were going to a processing center, which was kinda true. Over the whole time we talked, Juan was staring at me with this demented smile on his face, and I kept looking at him. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw his reflection in the tinted window. Juan was too short to see it, so it wasn't him reflected in the window. It was this demon riding along with us, the sharp needles of his crown pressing against the roof of the car. I bolted forward. Now I saw the demon staring at me in the side mirror. I could feel his breath on the back of my neck. I went berserk, sweaty, hyperventilating, and screaming at Steve to open the windows. He didn't want to. Something about breaking protocol, so I stretched over and tried to do it myself. Steve swerved and nearly ran us off the road. I didn't care. When he saw I wouldn't give up, he finally rolled down all the windows, and I could push my side mirror away. I didn't feel the hot breath on my neck anymore, so I could breathe again. But then, there was a new problem. Alma could see out her window. Now she knew we were going to Nogales to deport them. When we finally pulled into the Nogales border station, Alma said very little to me. The look on her face was worse than any demonic reflection. It was a look of betrayal, of hate. You ever been to the border? Like the barrier itself? It looks like a brown wall? Is that what you mean? Yeah. I've only seen photos. Well, what you don't see in the photos are the crosses that line the base of the thing, all the way up to the station. Each cross has a name of it of someone who died trying to make the crossing. When Steve and I were walking Alma and Juan to the station, she suddenly stopped and pointed to the crosses. "When you see mine," she said, "I hope it stays on your conscience forever." Then she spit in my face. Steve walked her and Juan the rest of the way by himself. Dom starts to weep. It's alright, my son. Let it out. I tried to kill myself. When? I took all the sleeping pills I had left. I just wanted some rest, you know. I'm so tired. I took all the pills and laid down on that bed for some rest. It should have killed me. I should have finally had some rest. But something woke me up. It was a loud chant, so loud I could hear the posters on the wall shake. I wanted to turn on the light and see who it was, but my stomach hurt so bad, I ran right into the bathroom and threw everything up. It saved my life. The chant made my head want to explode. Each low grunt knocked against my eardrums as I stumbled back into the main room. But even in the dark, I could tell it was empty, though I felt movements in my periphery. I remember thinking that they were outside the screen door, or near the TV, and my mind was swimming so bad I couldn't even think straight. Should I get my service weapon? Should I turn on a light? That seemed like the best idea, and my fingers finally tripped the switch along the wall. Here's the fucked up thing. The room was totally empty, but it was also completely full. In the dark TV screen, in the glare of the windows and screen door, and even in the fucking flower pot, I saw reflections of strange men. Their skin was painted blue and covered in gang tattoos. Somehow, they knew I could see them and stopped chanting. I didn't know what to think. It was like two worlds were on top of each other. Or maybe I digested too many of those pills and none of this was real. I moved across the room to get out, when suddenly all the men dropped to their knees, with their bodies out of the way. I could finally see my own reflection in the glare of the screen door. I wasn't myself. I was the demon. And these men, they were bowing to me. The only thing I could think of was to call you. But when I took out my phone, I saw something reflected in its black screen. On the ceiling, there was a pentagram drawn in blood. Just like in my dreams. Just like in my mom's story. And then, a waterfall of blood rained down on me. No dark surface was safe. I had to destroy them all. At this point, Tom goes silent again. He grabs a fistful of crushed glass off the floor and looks at it in his hand. I notice sweat begin to bead on his pale forehead. I can still see him here. He clenches his fist so tight around the glass that blood trickles between his knuckles. After we spoke, I brought Tom to a psychiatric hospital and took care to explain his fixation on dark reflective surfaces. I cannot say how much of this story is true and how much is fantasy. Before writing this, I read all his previous posts, and it would be easy to dismiss the supernatural as the delusions of a very guilty man. There were no strange reflections in his room that I could see, and there was nothing on the ceiling. But when I found him, he was completely covered in blood. And at the hospital, they said he did not have a scratch on him. The real wound, I am sure, is on his soul.